yeah, doesn't really care if it's barbaric or not, right? He just hates Muslims. And so what he does is he got to find something to hate us for. He's got to feel superior. Remember, most of these guys are white supremacists, right? Who are attacking Muslims, right? Or people who, in my mind, or have some sort of agenda, whether they're Christian, Baptist, Christian, American crazies. I don't really get the Christian kind of, different sects and whatever they are. But there's some type of American Christian guys, and I don't know what sect they come from. They're mad. I mean, I thought Jewish Zionists were nuts, but these guys give them a good run for their money, right? And they really hate Muslims, right? So it doesn't matter.
So most people who criticize Sharia law are white supremacists. What's your source? Is it C.J. Werleman? And you're also saying that the criticism of Sharia law comes from Christians and everyone who has a hatred for Islam and Muslims. But what about the secularists who are concerned about Sharia law? What about all of the liberal-minded Muslims who are against Sharia law? Do they hate Muslims as well?
Their main argument is this, that Sharia, the penal code of Sharia, the criminal code of Sharia, the things that governs people who are convicted of a criminal offence, is barbaric. And they hold the punishment up, for example, of the death sentence for a murderer, for example, or the chopping of a hand of a repeated convicted thief. Yeah? And they say that proves Sharia is barbaric. Ergo, that proves Muslims are barbaric. Ergo, that's why we hate you, and that's why we have to bomb you and occupy your lands. And believe it or not, that's the justification. It allows the economic and other exploitation of the Muslims. All these arguments lead to the same root. Yeah, Muslims are barbaric. Muslims are inferior.
So everyone who is critical of Sharia, including liberal, secular and reformist voices in Islam, or Uncle Toms, as Asghar would like to put it, they all want the same end goal. They want the imperialist West to conquer and bomb the hell out of the Middle East. Yeah, some argument this is.
So whatever their reason is, that's why they're doing it, yeah? And they're not doing it for an intellectual, in-depth discussion. What's confusing is this, and let's just break this down. They are offended, yeah, that people who have a trial in Sharia, you get a trial, right? You have a trial in front of a judge, yeah? You are convicted of the crime, murder, or repetitive theft, yeah? And then you get a harsh punishment at the end of it, yeah? So they're upset at the harsh punishment. The crime does not, the sentence does not fit the crime. It's too harsh. That's the proof of barbarity. Yeah, the sentence does not fit the crime. Crime is not that bad. Sentence is overly harsh. Yeah, but let's push back at the very people who are saying this.
The sentence does not fit the crime. The punishments are too harsh. Okay, so the death penalty for someone who apostatizes for Islam, the death penalty for someone who criticizes Muhammad or who blasphemes, or the death penalty by stoning for someone who commits adultery. I think that seems pretty harsh to me. I don't think I need to say any more about that.
Bad sentence is overly harsh. Yeah, but let's push back at the very people who are saying this. Let's take, for example, Western elites' constant droning of Muslims. Their crime, allegedly...
Constant droning of Muslims. What does foreign policy have to do with whether Sharia is good or bad? The conversation should be about whether Western secular law in Western secular countries, how does that compare with Sharia law? Not Western interventionism and warfare with the domestic law system of a country.
example, Western elites' constant droning of Muslims. Their crime, allegedly, they're terrorists. But all statistics are showing that the vast majority, vast majority, over 90% of the people who are murdered are not terrorists at all. Even the people they claim are terrorists, we actually have no knowledge of, because they never got a trial. They were not picked up. It's not they're picked up and they're taken in front of a judge and they have an open and fair trial. They never get a trial. Yeah?
Okay, so let's put the foreign policy argument aside. Let's say that hypothetically the West were actually the bad guys and were the biggest monsters in the world, which is not the case, but hypothetically. Does that make Sharia law a non-barbaric judiciary system? Sharia law should stand on its own and should not be relative to anything else, in particular Western foreign policy and the Western methods of warfare. They don't get a fair trial because it's war. Do you expect the evil Western imperialist, colonialist forces to land in a territory controlled by ISIS and individually capture every single person in the field of combat and take each person to court and give them a 6-month trial? No, it's not efficient. Instead, they resort to drone strikes with the intent of killing the enemy. And unfortunately, you do get a few innocents killed with the collateral damage. But that's expected. You said that 90% of the people who are killed in drone strikes are not terrorists. I'm interested in this statistic. Where did you get this from? What's your source? The point that I'm making is that you can't compare what happens in a battlefield with the national law of a country. I don't want to keep on repeating myself there.
As well. So I'm going back to off the point, right? I just want to show you. Crime unknown, alleged, no trial, yeah? Alleged militant. Punishment, death of them and their families. And not hand chopping, yeah? But their babies' heads chopping. Their arms and legs littering trees. And this is, eyewitnesses have seen this, journalists have seen this. Read Jeremy Scahill's Dirty Wars. Or the brilliant book, yeah, called Cruel Britannia, yeah, amazing book. So
I guess that in your view, Sharia law also encompasses various battlefield laws. So if I take those into consideration, I still think they're pretty barbaric and pretty filthy and disgusting as well. Muhammad allowed the taking of sexual slaves, something which ISIS is doing today, and they're getting their justification of this from the Hadith and the Quran. So would you go on to condemn this? Would you try justifying this, given that you're saying that Sharia law is not barbaric? How about actually talking about the actual laws of Sharia as opposed to just talking about Western interventionism?
Littering trees, and this is, eyewitnesses have seen this, journalists have seen this. Read Jeremy Scahill's Dirty Wars. Or evidence is put forward, he gets a trial and he is convicted of the crime, and they say you're barbaric because the punishment was too harsh. And let's look at your own actions of your people, because you want to separate it between us and them, your culture, yeah? I don't like doing it, but we've got to play this game because you want to play it, so let's do it, yeah? Your culture, your elites, your judges and juries, your law that you give to Muslims, yeah? Because I never seen a drone kill people in London or New York or anywhere in Europe. So the people you're killing is Muslims. So the law that you give to the Muslims gives them no trial. They're convicted on no evidence. Yeah? And the punishment is always death. So how are you telling me about Sharia law being barbaric when every law that you've ever given to the Muslims is far more barbaric?
Again, you are trying to compare collateral damage in warfare with domestic law. So are you saying that hypothetically, if your caliphate existed, not ISIS, but a caliphate which you dream of existed, and it declared a war on a rival nation, it doesn't have to be Israel, let's call it Nation X. Are you saying that there would be no innocent civilians of Nation X killed in warfare? And are you saying that no Muslim caliphate which has existed in the past has not done this? As Sam Harris argues, I'm pretty sure that if a caliphate did exist with the same power as America, if it hypothetically had the same military equipment and the same army size as what the United States has, I'm pretty sure it will cause far more collateral damage than what the West is causing now in Muslim countries. And also, it's funny that you criticize the West or the Jews for drone strikes in Muslim countries, but look at Saudi Arabia. Look what Saudi Arabia is doing to Yemen. Now, Saudi Arabia also has a law system which is very similar to the Sharia. Whether it is the Sharia or not is down to one's interpretation, and we'll put that argument aside. But the fact is that they are also doing drone strikes. Saudi Arabia is droning the hell out of Syria, out of Yemen, and they have a law system which is very Islamic orientated. So does that make drone strikes halal? I'm not too sure if whatever happens on the field of battle can be classed as a law, but if it is classed as a law, then technically two wrongs don't make a right, so that does not provide justification for cutting off of hands or stoning a woman to death for adultery. Perhaps you should rename your video Domestic Sharia Law in a Non-War Scenario versus US Military Law on the Field of Battle.
We prefer Sharia law. And you go, oh no, hold on mate, this proves how barbaric you are. See how mad that sounds, right? So if we look back at Muslim history, right? The proof in the pudding is that Sharia law was so loved by Muslims is because really it was a challenge to power. The government would say, we want to put these laws in place again, and I don't know, take your wealth or, confiscate land or whatever, right? And do certain things. And Muslims would have recourse to God's law, yeah? And they would say, well, hold on, under God's law, you can't do that, right? And we won't allow you to do that because then you're going against God. God is on the side of the oppressed, on the downtrodden. And so Sharia was always a pillar against power.
God's law? Why on earth did God make the Sharia so vague and ambiguous? Everybody has their own interpretation of Sharia law. Hypothetically, even if you are a conservative Muslim who wants to live under the Sharia, you would not want to live under the Sharia of somebody else's interpretation. Look at the Sunni-Shia divide, for example. That's why secularism is the solution in the Muslim world.
The upset about, Sharia law being barbaric, they got nothing on us. Muslims need to be a bit more confident and push back. Now, maybe I missed something. Maybe there's something that these guys have got, some ace card they're going to play. I've not come across it. I don't know. I'm not a theologian. It's just something that's been going around in my head, and I've just thought, this don't make no sense. Yeah, and maybe some, Zio laboratory propaganda unit in Tel Aviv or I know the EDL Intelligence Bureau is thinking through a great argument against Sharia law or something. And that's cool. Put it up. Let me have a think about it. But if you're a Muslim out there, come on, man. Let's stop hiding. Start defending the Muslims. Start getting active and put out our side of the story. Thanks a lot. Thanks for listening. Assalamu alaikum.
Do I have to read out all of Iran's human rights violations to you, Asghar? Do I have to talk about all of the injustices in Saudi Arabia? Now look, you can argue that both of these countries are not fully governed by the Sharia, and that they don't have your interpretation of Sharia law. Can you please give me a country which implemented the right version of Sharia law over society a country which exists today or which has existed in the past, and perhaps I can give you a list of all of the human rights violations which that country has committed. So can you please get back to me on that, perhaps on Twitter?